Shortly before saying goodbye to this world and his loved ones, the beloved Pope John Paul II revealed an intriguing secret. A mystery so profound that, if it were to come to light in its entirety, it could have changed the course of human history forever. Welcome to this channel, where we delve into stories of faith, mysteries, and spiritual teachings. Today, as announced, we will unveil the details of this enigmatic secret, one of the last legacies left by St. John Paul II, the pontiff who touched the hearts of millions and left an indelible mark on the trajectory of the Church and humanity. Before we go any further, I would like to extend a special invitation. Share this video with as many people as possible. By doing so, you will not only be spreading this inspiring story, but also demonstrating your dedication to a greater purpose, an attitude of commitment to God and to others. Get ready for an emotional and reflective journey, where we will explore the final words of one of the greatest spiritual leaders of our time. But what would the Supreme Pontiff have said in the final moments of his life? What words did he choose to mark his farewell from this world? These questions resonate in our minds, arousing curiosity and wonder. In what context were these words uttered? What is the true meaning behind them? These questions, full of mystery, will be addressed in this video, where we will bring you answers that promise to shed light on this unforgettable moment. The story we're sharing now is a tribute to the extraordinary life of Karol Wojtyła, born in 1920 in a small town in Poland. His career was marked by immense challenges and remarkable achievements. From an early age, Karol demonstrated an unshakable faith and a vocation to serve God and humanity. In 1946, he was ordained a priest, beginning a path of dedication and love for others. In 1958, he became bishop and, with his humility and wisdom, won the respect and admiration of everyone around him. A few years later, in 1967, he was made a cardinal, which paved the way for what would become his greatest mission. In 1978, the world met him as John Paul II, the Pope who would deeply touch the hearts of millions of faithful. Get ready to explore the details of this fascinating story. Every word spoken, every decision made by John Paul II carries a spiritual and historical weight that deserves to be reflected on and understood. Let's unravel together the mystery of his last words and the legacy of a man who changed the history of the Church and humanity forever. This extraordinary man was a living witness to the great tragedies and upheavals of the 20th century. Karol Wojtyła witnessed up close the horrors of devastating wars, the terror of Nazism, the oppression of communism, and the threat of terrorism that marked that dark era in history. In the face of such adversity, he not only endured, but chose to be a light of hope for the world, tirelessly spreading the message of the gospel to the four corners of the planet. During his pontificate, John Paul II made more than 100 apostolic journeys, reaching approximately 120 nations. In each country he visited, he not only proclaimed the Word of God, but also brought a message of compassion, unity, and reconciliation. He believed in the power of dialogue and engaged deeply with other religions and cultures, seeking to build bridges where there were walls. John Paul II became a tireless defender of peace, justice, and human dignity, dedicating every moment of his life to the service of the Church and humanity. Even when his health deteriorated, John Paul II remained faithful to his calling. He gave himself completely to God, living until his last moment with courage and serenity. His earthly journey came to an end on April 2nd, 2005, in the silence of his room in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. For years, a relentless illness weakened his body, but it didn't weaken his soul or his faith. Until the end, he was assisted by loyal collaborators and trusted doctors, who testified to his unshakable spiritual strength. John Paul II's death marked the end of a life dedicated to the divine mission and service to others. His legacy continues to inspire millions, reminding us of the strength that comes from faith and love of neighbor, even in the face of the greatest adversity. Millions of faithful around the world followed John Paul II's last moments with a heavy heart, connected by television and united in a chain of prayers. It was an instant of deep faith and devotion, in which humanity seemed to share the same sigh of farewell. The Holy Father's last words, as reported by his dedicated personal secretary, were spoken in Polish, his beloved mother tongue, full of meaning and emotion. These remarkable words were spoken at around 3 p.m. on April 2nd, 2005, just a few hours before his departure. The moment occurred just after the Pope had received the anointing of the sick and Holy Communion, reinforcing his total surrender to God until the last moment. After saying them, he didn't speak again, but remained conscious, his presence transmitting serenity and strength. These words were much more than simple farewells. They symbolized his last will, a testimony of love, hope, and unwavering faith. The scene was deeply moving. John Paul II was lying in his bed, his body weakened by illness, surrounded by some of the people closest to him. His face, pale and marked by pain, reflected both the physical suffering and the spiritual peace he carried. His breathing was labored and fragile, while his heart struggled to keep beating. With his eyes turned upwards, as if contemplating something beyond earthly comprehension, the Pope remained motionless, but intensely present. A reverent silence filled the room, interrupted only by the whispered prayers of those accompanying him. Each murmured word seemed to carry the weight of gratitude, farewell, and unshakable faith in God's purpose. It was a moment that transcended time, marking not only the end of an extraordinary life, but also the beginning of an eternal legacy that continues to inspire millions. Outside the windows of the Apostolic Palace, a peculiar sound echoed, the murmur of a vast and deeply moved crowd. Faithful from all over the world had gathered to watch, in prayer and silence, the final moment of their beloved pastor. The atmosphere was a mixture of reverence and sorrow, as attentive eyes gazed at the place where John Paul II faced his last moments on earth. With a final, soft opening of his lips, the Holy Father spoke words that resonated in Polish, the language of his childhood, his identity, and his vocation. It was a moment of return to his origins, a gesture of simplicity and depth. His words expressed a sincere and pure desire to return to the Father's house. They were not just phrases, but a testament of faith and a final surrender to God's will. With this declaration, the Pope fully entrusted his spirit into God's hands. Those present, both physically and spiritually, felt deeply moved. It was as if those words touched their hearts directly, offering a final gesture of comfort and inspiration. Shortly afterwards, the Pope closed his eyes for the last time. His breathing, already fragile, became even slower and quieter until it ceased completely. The heart he had loved and served so much stopped beating, and his gaze, which had so often reflected the divine light, faded gently. The Pope had left this world. The mourning was immediate. The world mourned the loss of an incomparable spiritual leader. The Catholic Church gathered in prayer, and many of the faithful felt as if the heavens themselves had opened to receive John Paul II. It was a moment of profound sadness, but also of hope and celebration for the life of a man who dedicated everything to the service of God and humanity. However, those were not his only remarkable words. During his pontificate, John Paul II left a legacy of powerful reflections on the future of Europe and the world. Words that echoed his spiritual vision, his concern for the challenges humanity would face, and his hope that, even after his physical absence, the principles of faith, love, and justice would continue to illuminate humanity's path. These messages were carefully recorded by witnesses and documents, and remain as an eternal guide for future generations. One of the most remarkable prophecies attributed to St. John Paul II dates back to March 1990, in a moment of intimate and profound reflection. During a private conversation with Monsignor Mariloni, at the time a student at the Pontifical Lombard College in Rome, the Pope shared words that would echo decades later. This encounter took place far from the public eye, but the message that was conveyed would be of immeasurable importance. It was only in 2017, during a conference held in Ortona, that Monsignor Mariloni decided to reveal this precious fragment of John Paul II's prophetic thought to the world. His words, spoken with gravity and discernment, contained a vision that was both worrying and hopeful for the future of Europe. On that occasion, the Pope reportedly said, "Remember what I am saying. Islam will invade Europe. Europe will become like an empty basement, marked by decadent values. Progressive materialism will spread along with unbridled consumerism. However, new seeds will be planted from solid roots, because what you call emptiness is nothing more than a weight." These words reflect not only an analysis of the cultural and spiritual trends that the Pope observed in his time, but also a deeply spiritual vision of the transformation that Europe would face. The image of an empty cellar symbolizes the loss of traditional values and the disconnection from the spiritual roots that once sustained the continent. At the same time, the mention of new seeds points to the possibility of renewal and hope, a rebirth that could emerge from roots that are still solid and alive. John Paul II's prophecy is a call to reflection for all generations, challenging us to examine the weight of materialism and consumerism in our lives and to rediscover the spiritual foundations that can sustain a stronger and more meaningful future. It stands as a powerful reminder of his ability to see beyond the present, glimpsing both the challenges and the opportunities that would shape humanity's destiny. In pronouncing these words, John Paul II expressed a serious, almost solemn tone that reflected his deep concern about the direction the world might take. His gaze, however, was not empty or desolate. On the contrary, there was a flame of hope in his eyes, as if he could see beyond the difficulties he was describing. It was a look of faith, which conveyed the certainty that even in the most challenging circumstances, there is always a path to renewal. These words, loaded with meaning, resonated as a warning and, at the same time, an invitation to reflect. The Pope not only pointed out the problems he saw on the horizon, but also signaled a way out: the need to rescue the spiritual and ethical values that could sustain a rebirth in the midst of the void. These words continue to provoke debate and reflection to this day. They lead us to ask, are we attentive to the signs of the times? Are we capable of looking beyond materialism and seeking deeper roots for our existence? John Paul II believes so, and his message remains a stimulus for us not to give up looking for answers and solutions. We want to know what you think about this. What are your thoughts on the Holy Father's words and the future he envisioned? Share your opinion with us in the comments. Your voice is important in keeping this conversation about faith, values, and hope alive in an ever-changing world. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.